Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving Up Live right here on Facebook Live, YouTube, and on Twitter. I am Bryson Carver, as always, and I am feeling good about myself today. It is a beautiful Friday. Where I live, man, it is beautiful outside. It's hot. It's kind of humid, but the weather's amazing. My team's up 3-0 in the first-round series. Of course, like I did in yesterday's show, repping the two-time MVP once again. Same white jerseys, the home jerseys that the Warriors have been wearing the last two playoff games. I'm going to start the show with my Warriors' big win, Game 3 over the Denver Nuggets. Why they got the win, why they are now officially today the NBA title favorites. I'll get into that on the show, as well as the Khris Middleton injury. This is bigger than I think some people giving it credit for. Like, this is a big injury for the defending champion Milwaukee Bucks, the team that I had getting back to the NBA Finals and losing to my Warriors. Game 3 tonight, going to be really interesting in Chicago to see what the Bulls do with the Bucks, obviously, in the absence of Khris Middleton. Also, of course, how could I not talk about the Grizzlies' wild 26-point comeback on the Minnesota Timberwolves yesterday? Credit to Memphis, no question about it. You don't come back from 26 points by not doing something right, of course. But I'm going to be all over the Minnesota Timberwolves in just a second. I'll discuss that, as well as the Jazz. Luka hasn't played a second in this series, and the Jazz are still down 2-1, as well as Kevin Durant. I'm going to call out Kevin Durant because tomorrow he has never played in a game. It won't be the biggest game of his career tomorrow. However, there has never been more pressure on Kevin Durant in an NBA basketball game than there will be tomorrow night in Game 3. That is all coming up on today's show. But first, I have to start with my Golden State Warriors. Oh my goodness, did they look good last night once again. Won a close Game 3. I had a feeling it was going to be close. I said that on yesterday's show. I said Denver's going to put up their biggest fight in Game 3. They're down 2-0. They're at home. The crowd's going to be on their side. They're going to be electric, and they were. Credit to the Denver fans, especially in the fourth quarter. They were bringing that energy. And my thing was, if the Warriors win Game 3, they'll take care of Game 4 because a lot of those Denver players are going to be thinking about Cancun, Bora Bora, wherever they're going to go vacationing. TNT, the great show inside the NBA, the best sports show on television. They do that special anytime a team gets eliminated called Gone Fishing, right? Where the team's gone fishing for the summer. The Nuggets are about to be on Gone Fishing because the Warriors are going to sweep the series. But as far as last night's game, what you saw is a typical road Warriors playoff game. That's what you saw. Now, we think about the great Warriors road playoff wins in the past. Outside of one, Game 4 against the Portland Trail Blazers back in 2016, outside of that one exception, Steph Curry doesn't normally come off the bench, of course. And he did for the third straight game. They're going to work him back into the starting lineup. Is he there on Sunday? Steph kind of hinted at it in the postgame. I have no idea. Frankly, considering the series is a wrap, I don't care because he's going to be in the starting lineup once the second round comes around this coming weekend. But I will say this. What you are seeing from the Golden State Warriors is championship-level basketball. Because they took care of home court. They did what they were supposed to do in taking care of home court. Did it in dominant fashion. But of course, we all know you got to win the road in the playoffs if you want to be a championship team. And first road game, we know the Denver altitude. Nikola Jokic finally showed up. Not in the last minute of the game, but for the most part, finally showed up. 37 points, 18 rebounds, shot 64% for the field. He did his job. I'm not going to bag on Jokic today. I didn't think he played well at all in the last sequence of the game. But by and large, Jokic played well. Okay, so I'm not going to trash him the way I did Games 1, Game 2, because he didn't play well the first two games. Okay, so the other team's best player shows up. You build a 12-point lead, lose it in the third quarter. You're down 2 with 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and it was flawless execution down the stretch. A Wiggins 3 puts them up 1. You got a Jordan Poole layup after an offensive rebound by Andrew Wiggins. This is why I said that Andrew Wiggins was going to be, kind of the X factor for this team. We know what Steph, Clay, Draymond, Poole brings to the table. PTSD, as one Warriors fan called them. But what does Andrew Wiggins bring? Well, He's not a number one option. We found that out in Minnesota. But like I said, and I said this on the show 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I said on this very show when Wiggins was traded to Golden State, I said he is a way better fit than D'Angelo Russell ever was with Golden State. And again, I'm going to talk about those Timberwolves. Shout out to my man Rory from Across the Pond Sports. Love that guy. He's a Timberwolves fan. I feel terrible for him today and for all of Timberwolves fans, but I'll save that for later. But Andrew Wiggins, like I said, is better than Harrison Barnes. And the Warriors won 67 games and a championship 1 year, and then won 73 games and nearly won a second straight championship with Harrison Barnes in their starting lineup. It's not a shot at Harrison Barnes. He's a good NBA player. Andrew Wiggins is better. He's a better three-point shooter. He's a better driver of the basketball, better finisher in the paint. He struggles at the free throw line, which concerns me a little bit, but he is an excellent defender. And Andrew Wiggins, in my opinion, made the two biggest plays of that game because he hits the three. I mean, Steve Kerr even said after the game, the three he hit to put the Warriors up by 1 with about 2 minutes to go, Steve Kerr said that was the shot of the game. And I agree because the Warriors never gave up the lead after that. But they get a stop at the other end, come back down, and we're seeing in all the highlight films, Jordan Poole hits that ridiculous reverse layup with the right hand. It was beautiful. Jordan Poole, man, is fearless, okay? And I told y'all coming into this playoffs, Jordan Poole's like that. I keep saying on social media, he's like that, okay? He's fearless. The playoffs are not too big for this guy. He's hit a freaking buzzer beater in March Madness, okay? He plays big when the big moments. But that Jordan Poole layup does not happen if Andrew Wiggins doesn't get that offensive rebound off of a Steph Curry missed three. Because Wiggins grabs rebound, kicks it out to Steph. Steph's got an open look again, but he sees Jordan Poole is wide open. Poole decides not to take the three, drives to the basket, and gets the reverse layup. And then, down the stretch, the two most important Warriors made the two closing plays of the game. I said Wiggins made the two biggest plays, but as far as the two closing plays, the two most important Warriors, maybe not the two best Warriors, one of them is the best Warrior, but the two most important Warriors made the two most important plays. Warriors up by 3. Okay, so this game is definitely not decided yet with about 40 seconds to go. Steph Curry gets the switch on Jokic, takes advantage of it, gets past him, lays it up. And then, to cap it off, Warriors up 5. 40 seconds left. Denver's got to work quickly. And Draymond Green pulls a Michael Jordan on Karl Malone. Remember the Michael Jordan play? The most iconic Michael Jordan play, in my view, 98 Finals, Game 6. Bulls down 1. Karl Malone's got the ball with 30 seconds left. Jordan comes from behind, strips him, and hits the game-winning shot. The Last Dance Bulls, remember? Game-winning shot to win the Finals. Draymond Green, now it wasn't a Last Dance moment, obviously, but Draymond Green pulls a Michael Jordan on Karl Malone. With 5 fouls, strips Nikola Jokic, advances it up the floor. That's basically a wrap. And so that, to me, is what makes a championship team. Do you play great defense down the stretch? Do you have closers? Well, the Warriors have 3 offensive. Heck, should I call Wiggins a closer yet? Maybe, maybe not. What I do know is he made the biggest shot of the game. But they have 3 bona fide closers, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Jordan Poole, and they have a defensive closer in Draymond Green. You have that. You have a team as deep as the Warriors. Otto Porter grabbed some huge rebounds. Gary Payton II gave you 11 points, went 4 for 4 from the field, 3 for 3 from 3. Like, Gary Payton is not a great shooter, and he hit all 3 of his 3-pointers and went 4 for 4 from the field in total. That's the thing that I've been trying to tell you about the Warriors. Everybody got tired of the strength in numbers, right? Remember this saying, the Warriors back in the day, 2015, they said strength in numbers, right? Talking about their depth. Well, that's back. The strength in numbers, that is back with this basketball team. When you have your starters, I mean, we know the splash triplets, as I called them, ain't no Splash Brothers anymore, man. It's the splash triplets. Klay Thompson gave you 26, hit 10 shots. Steph Curry gave you 27 off the bench. Jordan Poole gave you 27, going 9 for 13 for the field. I will say this. Steph Curry is going to come back in the lineup soon. Will it be game 4 or will it be game 1 of the second round? Not sure. What I do know is this. You're not taking Jordan Poole out of the starting lineup. You can't do it. You can't do it if you're Steve Kerr, in my view. Because Steph, Klay, Draymond, they're obvious starters. Their spot in the starting lineup is set, obviously. And so the decision to make is it Wiggins? Is it Looney? My decision, I'm making Wiggins the sixth man. Now, Wiggins is in the closing lineup, obviously, but I'm still going to start Kevon Looney, and here's why. What does Kevon Looney give you? 10 minutes, 6 fouls. And he committed 4 last night. 4, kind of quick fouls. Didn't want to committing it too quickly. But once you get to the second round, okay, so you dealt with Jokic. You dealt with one big man. So you get to the second round. Memphis is going to beat Minnesota. Is it in 5 games? Is it in 6 games? Who knows? But Golden State's going to see Memphis in the second round, as all of us predicted. And Kevon Looney is going to have to deal with the size of Jaren Jackson and, to a lesser degree, Steven Adams. Okay, let's say the Warriors win that series. Well, if Phoenix can get healthy and beat either Dallas or the Jazz, you'll have to deal with DeAndre Ayton. Can Draymond Green guard those big men? Yes. But you don't want him using a lot of fouls on them early in the game, because that will be the coach's game plan. That will be Taylor Jenkins' game plan for the Grizzlies. That would be Monty Williams' game plan with the Suns. By the way, let's say the Boston Celtics or the Milwaukee Bucks get to the finals. Well, you'll have Giannis on one end for the Bucks. You'd have Robert Williams, who reportedly is going to play tomorrow night, coming back from injury, on the other end. Well, Draymond can guard those guys, and he can guard them late in the game. But these are smart coaches we're talking about. They're going to try to get Draymond Green out of the game, as fast as possible. Get him in foul trouble right off the bat. Go to the big man early. Because if Kevon Looney's not going to play late in the game anyway. So Kevon Looney can use his 6 fouls. He's kind of like Zaza Pachulia. Right now, Looney's better than Pachulia. He's a much better defender than Zaza ever was. But Zaza was there for 10 minutes, get us some rebounds, play decent defense on the other team's big, and that's all we need for you. That's Looney's role with this team. And let Draymond take care of the rest in closing time. That's what the Warriors did last night, what they've done throughout this series, and what I think Steve Kerr's going to have to do moving forward. So if it were me, Jordan Poole has to stay in the starting lineup. You can't take him out. You cannot take him out of the way he's playing. By the way, when Klay Thompson returned, they put Jordan Poole on the bench. So it was the Splash Brothers. Splash Brothers, Draymond, Wiggins, Looney. Warriors fans, y'all can attest, fellow members of Dub Nation, y'all can attest right along with me. Jordan Poole kind of went a little cold there because he started the year in the starting lineup because Klay Thompson started the season injured, of course, and it was a little bit of adjustment to him. So you don't want to do anything to get Jordan Poole out of his rhythm. Nothing. So to me, I would put Wiggins on the bench. Keep Looney in the lineup. Let him play 10, 11 minutes. Then go to Wiggins. That's what I would do. Because Wiggins knows his role. Wiggins knows he's there to give you 15 points, great defense. That's what Andrew Wiggins is there for. He's playing the Harrison Barnes role, except he's better than Harrison Barnes. So that's my take on the Warriors. I said before the series started, they are going to sweep Denver, regardless of what they get from Steph Curry, because A, the Warriors are better than the Nuggets. B, I don't fear Nikola Jokic, who, by the way, despite Jokic's good game last night, that is now 7 consecutive playoff losses for the Denver Nuggets with Nikola Jokic. 7 straight playoff losses. This could be the 2nd consecutive year that the MVP is swept out of the playoffs. But go and convince yourself he's more valuable than Giannis and then Joel Embiid. I'm just saying. But yes, the Warriors are the favorites today. I believe Vegas has them as the favorites today. Phoenix is beat up with Devin Booker out. And right now, they're involved in a little bit of a dogfight with New Orleans. Like I said on the yesterday's show, I talked about the Suns. We're going to find out a lot about Phoenix. Because like I said in yesterday's show at the end of the show, I said, look, Phoenix got all the breaks in the Western Conference playoffs up until the finals with injuries. Now they're dealing with injuries. It's a whole different ballgame. So it's going to be really interesting to see what the Suns do. I believe in them. Deep roster, great coach, phenomenal leader in Chris Paul. They are going to really miss Devin Booker. And so that game 3, I believe, is tonight. That is going to be fascinating. We got some great playoff games tonight, folks. What do we have? You got the Heat and the Hawks. Well, you know what? I'll preview these games later in the show. I'll preview them later in the show. Let me move on now. Let me get a drink of water for this one because I got a lot to say. Okay. Man, oh man, oh man, oh man, oh man. Memphis Grizzlies, Minnesota Timberwolves, Game 3, Western Conference first round series. Series tied at a game apiece. Timberwolves stole Game 1 in Memphis. Memphis responded with a big win, a blowout win in Game 2. We open Game 3. And a quarter and a half of the way in, the Minnesota Timberwolves have a lead of 47-21. That's a 26-point lead for those of you who aren't good at math, but I'm sure you're great at math. The point is, they open up with a 26-point lead. What do the Memphis Grizzlies do to close out the second quarter? They go on a 15-0 run to close the gap. Okay, so it goes from 26 to, hold on a second. We're only down, I think they were down 10 at halftime. So you gave Memphis some belief. But, to the credit of the Timberwolves, they go on a big run, and they go up 25. In the fourth quarter of this basketball game, ladies and gentlemen, or I should really say with about 2 minutes left, 2 minutes left, I think it was, in the third quarter, the Minnesota Timberwolves were up, I think it was 25 points, whatever it was. The Memphis Grizzlies proceeded to go on a run, a 50-16 run, outscoring them by 34 and winning the basketball game by 9 points. Ja Morant didn't play particularly well. I know I think he had a triple-double last night. Yes, he did. 16 points, 10 rebounds, 10 assists. I get the triple-double. Desmond Bane was the best player on that court in the second half. Desmond Bane, I believe he's up for most improved player. He's had an excellent season. He was phenomenal from three-point range, especially. He went 7 for 15 and gave you 26 points in 40 minutes. So Desmond Bane showed up. But Ja Morant is not the scoring threat that we know him to be. He's 27-point-per-game scorer this regular season. Only gave you 16 last night. There's two people to blame for that loss. Okay. Number one's Chris Finch. Now, Chris Finch, I said last year when the Timberwolves gave him the job, I said, I don't know if I'm a huge fan of this hire for a multitude of reasons. But this year, coaches the Minnesota Timberwolves in the playoffs and gets a contract extension. I'm like, hey, listen, hats off, big time. Chris Finch was the second biggest reason this team lost the basketball game last night. Memphis, to start the fourth quarter, goes on a 21-0 run. 21-0. At no point in that stretch did Chris Finch call a timeout. At no point. I criticized Steve Nash on yesterday's show. I criticized Steve Nash for the very, very same thing during the Nets-Celtics game. Remember the Celtics in the fourth quarter when in that big run, Jaylen Brown was hitting some shots? And it's like, Steve, you've got 3 timeouts. Call one. Timeout. Let's slow it down. You're on the road. Let's slow it down a little bit. Chris Finch, timeout. Dude, the game is literally slipping from you. You are about to throw this game in the garbage and probably cost yourself the series because you lose this after holding a 26-point lead. I'm not sure how you psychologically come back from that, to be honest with you. So Chris Finch deserves blame because when a team goes on a big run, like, Ty Lue is I know the Clippers didn't make the playoffs, but Ty Lue did one heck of a job this season. Ty Lue is one of the best coaches in the NBA at doing this, where a team, his team has a big lead, whether he was in Cleveland or now with the Clippers. If his team's got a big lead, and the opposition goes on like a 7-0 run. Like they hit 3 straight shots. They hit a couple threes, a few shots and 2 twos and a 3. Ty Lue's like, timeout, slow it down. Let's tell my guys, settle them down, and let's go build back the lead. And almost always his team does. Ty Lue is a great feel of the game. Now, some of that's because he played the game, right? He played with Shaq and Kobe back in the day. But Chris Finch has got to have a better feel for the game. When the Grizzlies are starting to go on that run, you say hindsight's 20/20. No, it's not, because I criticized Steve Nash for the very same thing on Wednesday night. Got to use a timeout in that situation, or at least a couple, at the very least. And number one, though, on the blame list is Karl-Anthony Towns. I don't know what's gotten into Cat lately. I really don't. He was trash. I don't like using that word a lot because these are NBA players. These are the best basketball players on earth. But he was trash in the playing game. He was a liability in the playing game for the Timberwolves in their win over the Clippers. And last night, he took 4 shots, scored 8 points. 4 shots. The best player on the team. And I love Anthony Edwards. That kid is, man, he's going places. But today, Karl-Anthony Towns is the best player in the Minnesota Timberwolves. He took 4 shots. He played a grand total of 33 minutes. He took 4 shots. 3 for 4 from the field, 0 for 1 from 3. 8 points. By the way, Karl-Anthony Towns, who is 6'11", 7 feet tall, 5 rebounds. Biggest player on the floor for probably 32, if not all 33 of the minutes he's on the basketball court. 5 rebounds. To make matters worse, during the game, they have Karl-Anthony Towns mic'd up on the sideline. And it's in the first half when the Timberwolves, I think at that point, they were up 21 points. And Karl-Anthony Towns said something along the lines of, we in Minnesota now. It's different here in Minnesota. Right? Basically saying, oh, you Grizzlies, you think you're something. Wait till you come to our house, right? Okay, don't have a huge issue with that. After the game, when the Wolves blow the big lead, Karl-Anthony Towns, to a few questions, says next question when asked a certain question by the media. So he's given the old-fashioned next question that used to drive me nuts with Russell Westbrook, and Westbrook hasn't gotten much better, at the podium. But Karl-Anthony Towns is asked a question about how his team is going to respond to this loss. His response was, quote, it's really simple. Just decompress. Just go home and remember what got us here. Remember what got me here. It's our support system, our working each other, and we just got to lean on that. He continued. Let's see. I missed the quote. Yeah. He said, well, that was early in the game. He said, yeah, we in Minnesota now. He said, just get a glass of wine. We're going to get a glass of wine. Huh? We're just going to blow a 26-point lead. We're just going to have a glass of wine. I don't know if he's trying to pull a LeBron, because, LeBron, after some playoff games in the past, like the last 3-4 years, especially if his team's lost a playoff game, he said, man, I'm just going to go home and just, have a glass of wine. Yeah, LeBron can say that. He's a 4-time champion. He's a 4-time MVP. He's a 4-time regular season MVP. He's in the conversation with the great Michael Jordan as the greatest basketball player who ever lived. Karl-Anthony Towns has never won a playoff series. He's won 2 playoff games in the NBA. I think it is safe to say, and I like Karl-Anthony Towns as a human being, and we know the talent that guy has. We saw it back in the days at Kentucky, and we've seen it in spurts. Heck, the man won the 3-point contest this year as a center. We know this dude can ball out. There's no question about it. But you have not earned the right to say, I'm just going to go home, have a glass of wine. Or to say, even worse, in my opinion, to say, next question. Nah, man. You play the way you played. Your team blows the lead they blew. You got to man up and answer these questions. But I think it's safe to say, remember a few years ago, Jimmy Butler? Remember, everybody's like, oh, Jimmy Butler's such a locker room cancer, right? I can't stand Jimmy Butler. And he was so mean to Karl-Anthony Towns and even to my guy Andrew Wiggins. Remember Jimmy Butler had that big blow up at practice back in 2018, and he forced his way out of Minnesota, got traded to the 76ers, and he was saying, man, Cat's soft. Wiggins is soft. These guys are soft. Where's Jimmy Butler today? Where's Cat today? Just like I said about Jimmy Butler. He can rub people the wrong way. I understand that. But it's like I said in the show about a year and a half ago when the Heat made the finals in the bubble in 2020. I said, say what you want about Jimmy Butler. He's been the veteran on some young basketball teams. And the first time that the supporting cast of young players, your Tyler Heroes, your Duncan Robinsons, your Bam Adebayos, listened to him, his team got to the NBA Finals. Now, they had a down year last year. They were the 6th seed and got swept by the Bucks. But where are they this year? Oh, best record in the Eastern Conference, and he's coming off of a 45-point game against the Atlanta Hawks. So, safe to say Jimmy Butler was probably right about Karl-Anthony Towns. But you can't take 4 shots, score 8 points, 5 rebounds as a 6'11 big man, the best player in your team, blow a 26-point lead, and blow it off like it's no big deal. You can't do that. You've not earned the right to be able to do that. Heck, I'd criticize LeBron or KD if they did that. The Cat's obviously not on that level. But when you're the franchise, Charles Barkley was ripping him last night. I think Chuck's points were fair. Chuck can Chuck can go over the edge sometimes in criticizing players, but I thought he was right on the money on this one. Like, Cat, we know you got the talent. But the postseason, man, it's a different beast, man. And when you had a Minnesota team, and John Morant had the famous quote a few days ago. He said, you know the old saying, we want that smoke, we want all the smoke. And John Morant went a step further and said, yeah, we want all the smoke. We're running down the chimney. So they really want that smoke. And we know Memphis is, they're a confident basketball team. And that's the one thing they deserve a ton of credit on, is their confidence. They never wavered. That's the mark of a well-coached team in Taylor Jenkins. And that's the mark of a great leader that they have in a superstar in John Morant. That's what it comes down to. So not to take any credit away from Memphis. But, at the end of the day, this was a game that Minnesota gave away more than it was Memphis coming back. It's plain and simple. I know a lot of people are talking about today, this is just, this is just Minnesota. They're just a young team. I'm tired of hearing that. Memphis is young. What did I say, going into the series? I said this series is fascinating because it's 2 young teams. Memphis is young. So the youth excuse, if they were playing Golden State or if they were playing Phoenix or even Dallas has some veterans, okay. Memphis is a young basketball team, equally young to the Timberwolves. So the youth excuse does not apply here. My man John Rivera, host of the Fan Perspective podcast. Go check out their stuff, man. It's awesome. He says Pat and Edwards can't have the same amount of shots or shot attempts. And yeah, Pat meaning Patrick Beverley, who, by the way, was equally bad last night. Yep, same amount of shot attempts. Anthony Edwards, 6 for 13. Patrick Beverley, 5 for 13. Pat Bev was also 0 for 5 from 3. At least Anthony Edwards hit 4 of his threes. But yes, Patrick Beverley's role is to frustrate dudes. Because like I've said, he's a really good defender. He's not a great defender. He's not Marcus Smart, okay? He's not Dylan Brooks. Like, those two can straight up defend. Like Dylan Brooks, I know he's guarded my man Steph multiple times, and Steph's gotten his because he's a great player, and great players always get theirs. But Dylan Brooks makes it tough on you, man. Pat Bev really doesn't. His job is to get up in people's business, frustrate them, get in their heads a little bit. It's not to take 13 shots and go 0 for 5 from 3. I totally agree with you, John. And I think Edwards, not only Cat should take way more shots, but Anthony Edwards should take more than 13 shots. He was good from three-point range right last night. He can knock down the three-point shot. He's improved on that and his defense drastically since his rookie year. So give him credit in that regard on improving what was kind of a deficiency in his game. But that was as bad. In terms of, I don't use the word choke a lot. I think a choke or choke job is kind of overused. in a lot of cases. But a choke job, in my view, is you're doing something right and you get scared, right? You build the lead and you get tight. You win a game, you don't win a game you should because you got tight. That's a choke job to me. Minnesota got tight. They did. Cat wasn't about that smoke like the Grizzlies were, clearly. Pat Bev, I mean, what did he say after the game? He had the quote like, it looks like it's a really big deal, but when you really think about it, it's not. It's like, dude, you just blew a 26-point lead at home. It's not series over, but it is a big deal. You can't just be you can't throw away games in the playoffs, especially when you're the inferior team. Because as good as Minnesota is, they're the inferior team. Memphis is the 2 seed for a reason. Minnesota's the 7 seed for a reason. Minnesota had to win in the play-in game. Memphis had the second best record in basketball. They were 20-5 without John Morant. They're clearly the better team. You can't just be throwing away games like this. Man. Karl-Anthony Towns, I feel like, though, it's almost, it's not as bad, or, well, actually, I think this is worse, what Cat's dealing with. But Cat is almost in that stage of his career like Joel Embiid was a few years ago. Remember Joel Embiid? We're like, good Lord, this guy's talented. But, man, does he have the dog in him? Does he have that? I mean, because he's got the body, 7'2", what are we going to give him, 280? Maybe more than that. He can back dudes down and stuff it on him, right? Like, not as dominant as Shaq, obviously, but Shaq-ish. Cat's got that body. He just doesn't take advantage of it. Just as bad of a postseason choke job in a single game. We're talking about not series, but a single game. I mean, remember back in 2015 when the Clippers blew the 3-1 lead? Remember that game 6 when the Clippers were like up 19 points or something going into the fourth quarter? Could have easily closed the series out. And the Houston Rockets without James Harden. It was like Josh Smith and Corey Brewer and who else was that? Trevor Ariza made that big comeback without James Harden on the Clippers. That's up there. My Warriors blowing a 31-point lead to the Clippers 3 years ago. That was bad. At least the Warriors ended up winning that series. But this is, I haven't seen this one this bad in a while. This is, as far as single games, this is up there. Also, too, remember when the Clippers blew the 3-1 lead to Denver? I've said multiple times in the show. They had, I think it was a 17-point lead in Game 5, lost. 19-point lead in Game 6, lost. 12-point lead, I think it was, in Game 7, lost. So, I mean, you could certainly put that in the conversation as well, but just bad. Now, I wouldn't say equally as bad, but close to just as bad was the Utah Jazz and the Dallas Mavericks last night. Now, maybe not as many people saw that game because it was on NBA TV. I was kind of flipping back and forth when I completely turned my focus away from the Dallas and Utah game once Memphis started making their comeback against the Timberwolves. And certainly once that game ended and the Warriors game started, of course, most of my attention's on the Warriors game, but I'm still keeping an eye on the Dallas and Utah game. So I picked Utah to win this series in 6 games for one reason and one reason only, because I didn't think Luka was going to give them much in this series because he's hurt. Well, to this point, he's giving them literally nothing because of the calf injury. He hasn't played a second in this series. And reports are he could play in Game 4. Now, is this Dallas's way of keeping Utah on their toes? Maybe, because it sounded like he might, a few days ago, it sounded like he was on track to play Game 3. But 3 hours before tip-off, it wasn't like a game-time decision. It was like 3 hours before tip-off, no, he's not going to play tonight. And so for the Jazz, you got a tied series. Okay, you lose the Game 2 on the road with no Luka. I criticized them for it, but from the Jazz perspective, you could have been like, hey, yes, we lost when Luka missed Game 2, but we've taken care, we split the series, or we split the first 2 games in Dallas. We've got home court advantage now. You got to take care of home court advantage, though. Now, the difference in this game and the Minnesota-Memphis game, like I said, that was more, in my view, about Minnesota throwing the game away than it was Memphis coming back. Because give Memphis credit, but Minnesota coaching, the best player on their team not showing up, that to me was more of a factor than Memphis doing what they did on both ends of the floor. I think this was a different story. I want to start by giving Dallas their credit. And I want to also continue to reiterate, man, was I wrong on the Jason Kidd hiring. When they hired Jason Kidd, I talked about in the show, whenever it was, back in July, August, I think it was August, when they hired Jason Kidd to replace Rick Carlisle, I'm like, don't like it. I didn't like it because he had Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett in Brooklyn, won a single playoff series, and Miami smoked them in the playoffs. He went to Milwaukee. He had Giannis. Now, he didn't have Giannis, like MVP level Giannis yet, but they never got as high as, I think, the 6th seed under Jason Kidd. Jason Kidd gets fired. They bring in Mike Budenholzer, who I'm not a huge fan of, and Milwaukee, the year after letting go of Jason Kidd, it has the best record in the NBA for 2 straight years. And then the 3rd year, they win a championship. So I was like, team seems to get better. Brooklyn didn't, but Milwaukee certainly did. Teams seem to get better when they leave. I was wrong. Jason Kidd has done a fantastic job with this Dallas Mavericks team. Obviously, look at the trade bringing Spencer Dinwiddie into the building. That was huge. You look at guys like Jalen Brunson, who, by the way, this kid. Something about them Villanova guys, man. And by the way, speaking of Villanova, big shout out to Jay Wright, who is retiring from basketball, the longtime head coach of the Villanova Wildcats, 2-time national champion, one of the best coaches in college basketball, great dude as well. He sent a lot of dudes to the NBA in his time there. So shout out to Jay Wright on a phenomenal career at Villanova. So I'm going to go ahead and give one of his former players, their due share. Jalen Brunson was a man on a mission last night. 31 points. 12 for 22 from the field, and gave you 5 assists as well, and also 1 turnover. Only 1 turnover as the starting point guard. He's controlling the pace of the game. He's scoring efficiently. He only had 5 assists, but he's initiating the offense, getting guys involved. A lot of hockey assists if you watch that basketball game. Jalen Brunson showed up big time. You look at guys like Finney Smith, who played 47 minutes. Finney Smith was phenomenal in game 2. Okay. So Dallas deserves their credit. And this is why I said, folks, like the last month of the regular season, I said before the year, Phoenix and Golden State are the only 2 contenders out west. With a month left in the regular season, I said add Dallas to that group. There's 3 contenders out west. Dallas is one of them. Because I don't buy into Memphis as a championship contender because I think they're just too darn young. They're on their way, but I just think they're too young right now. I put Dallas in that group. Well coached, way deeper roster than they've had in recent years, way better defensively than they were in the last years under Rick Carlisle, and Luka, being the young player he is, just getting better and better and better. He's already a superstar in this league. So all of those components, you put all those into the equation, and you have yourselves a championship level basketball team. So add Luka back to this mix with Devin Booker out. How long is D-Book out? We don't know. Phoenix, if they beat the Pelicans, and that's not a guarantee. I think they'll beat the Pelicans, but that's not a guarantee. Phoenix could be in some trouble in the second round. Because at this point, I can't see Utah winning this series. I can't. You can't give away 2 games in which Luka Doncic does not play. By the way, for the record, game 1 came down to the last 2 minutes. It took Donovan Mitchell playing out of his mind in the second half for the Jazz to hang on to that game 1 win in Dallas. And so, switching now to the Jazz, Donovan Mitchell needs to make, in my view, the decision that I think Damian Lillard needs to likewise make. Look, I'm with a well-run franchise. Jazz are a well-run franchise. Portland's a well-run franchise. Solid coaching, decent roster. I'm basically guaranteed to make the playoffs every year, but I just don't have enough. Now, Damian Lillard, I think there's more of a sense of urgency than Donovan Mitchell because Donovan Mitchell's still a young player. He's in his mid-20s. Dame's like 32, 31, 32 years old. Like, his prime's not going to last that much longer. I want to see Dame with a championship contender. He's too good of a player. He's, too great of a leader to miss the opportunity to play for a championship-level team. But Donovan Mitchell needs to make that exact same decision. Because, okay, I'm getting paid with a good team. Got Rudy Gobert and Jordan Clarkson and Bogdanovich and Mike Conley. Now, Mike Conley's been awful this series, but Mike Conley's a solid point guard. Just not enough. It's just not enough. Free agents aren't coming to Salt Lake City. I'm talking big name free agents are not coming to Salt Lake City. Big name free agents aren't coming to Portland. And so when you look at a guy, by the way, Donovan Mitchell, I've said so many times on the show, I don't think he gets enough credit for it. He's been one of the better playoff performers that we have in this league. I mean, from his third year on, his rookie year, he put on a show in the playoffs. Yeah, he averaged 24 a game. That went down to 21 a game. This is in the playoffs, by the way, in his second year. But his third year on to now, he averaged 36 points, 32 points, 33 points this postseason. He gets buckets in the postseason. Last year, remember that Game 6 against the Clippers? Jazz, it was a must-win game for them. They had to win the road. They had that big, I think it was like a 25-point lead, and the Clippers, came back to beat them. Donovan Mitchell scored like 40-something that game. He showed up. Everybody else didn't hold up their end of the bargain. And that has too often been the story for these Utah Jazz. Good in the playoffs, but do we trust him long-term? No. We trust Donovan Mitchell. Certainly I trust Donovan Mitchell. He's had some 50-point games in the postseason. But the supporting cast doesn't show up when it's all said and done. Rudy Gobert. Man, this guy's something. A guy who has been voted, you think I get mad about Jokic winning MVP? Most likely this is going to be his second MVP that he's going to get in a week or two. I get equally as mad about Rudy Gobert having 3 Defensive Player of the Year trophies. The fact that Rudy Gobert has 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards and Draymond Green has 1 is a frickin' basketball crime. Because Rudy Gobert is once again getting exposed. What do I mean by that? The Dallas Mavericks in this series, if you're watching the games, the Dallas Mavericks in this series are doing the exact same thing that the Clippers did last year. The Clippers went small. They had Nick Batum play the 5 rather than Zubac. So they had 5 shooters out on the floor. Rudy Gobert can't stay with them. He's getting exposed once again against the Dallas Mavericks. Dallas is going small, and Rudy's getting exposed yet again in the postseason. I'm just throwing that out there. So Donovan Mitchell, it's time. It's time. Now, I've heard a lot of people say, what about the Knicks? Do you think he forces his way to New York? He's from New York. Again, I don't know why anybody, any star player will want to go to a team run by James Dolan. Now, to play at the Garden? Yeah. The Garden's one of the best atmospheres in professional sports. It's awesome. But when you have an organization run by that doofus, James Dolan, you're not going to get too far. Even with a solid roster, even with Tom Thibodeau, who's done a decent job. He had a great first year and certainly a downer in year 2. Is it possible that maybe, just throwing this out there, do Donovan Mitchell and Damian Lillard team up in New York? Because if they do, that's a contender. That is a contender. That's 2 top 15 players in the NBA teaming up. 2 guys whose games works well off of one another. Now, who do they surround around those guards? But that's a contender out east. I'm throwing that out there. But what I do know is that I don't know where Donovan Mitchell is going to play next year. All I know is it can't be with Utah. And it's not a shot at the Utah Jazz because it's a well-run franchise. I don't love, but I like Quinn Snyder as a head coach. But there is a hard ceiling on how far they can go in the postseason. And it's concerning if you are a player at the level that Donovan Mitchell is. But again, credit to Dallas. Credit to Jason Kidd. Doing a phenomenal job there. When you look at how bad Dallas was the last 2 years defensively in the playoffs, and this year, I mean, it's night and day. And Jason Kidd, again, deserves credit for that. It's the same thing with the Boston Celtics. They were good defensively under Brad Stevens, who I still think is going to be a head coach one day in the future. But Ime Udoka comes in, and they go from good defense to the best defense in basketball. Like, that's coaching. That's for coaching. But anybody tells you, if KD and Kyrie tells you coaching don't matter in the NBA, they don't know what they're talking about in that regard. Coaching 100,000% matters in the NBA. Not as much as the NFL, but it absolutely matters in the NBA. Speaking of KD and Kyrie, and specifically the former of those two superstar players that I mentioned, Kevin Durant. Like I said on yesterday's show, like I said at the beginning of today's show when previewing what we were going to discuss on the show, this is the biggest game of Kevin Durant's career in terms of pressure. And here's why. Kevin Durant, to me, I think to most people, is one of the 15 greatest basketball players of all time. I've got him at 13, but I think he's no lower than 15. He's certainly got a chance. I think a championship, I think what's unique about Steph and KD, I think a championship for either of them puts them in the top 10 because we know their skill set, we know the accolades, and we know the postseason success, but winning a championship without one another. Now, Steph has already won a championship without KD, but can he win one post KD? That would be huge for Steph Curry's legacy. I think a championship would be possibly even bigger for KD's legacy. Because now the narrative of he needs an already great team to win would be gone. Because Brooklyn, I hate to break it to y'all, Brooklyn's not a great team. They have two great players, but the roster isn't deep at all. And Steve Nash is not a good head coach. He's a great point guard, one of the 10 greatest point guards ever. He's not a great coach. But when you consider the fact that KD left Golden State, and we see, I led the show off with it, you see the Warriors flourishing right now. 3-0 lead in the first round. They're going to get to the second round. And here KD is sitting here as the 7 seed, down 2-0 in a must-win game. This is an elimination game, but if Brooklyn loses tomorrow, it's a wrap. Of course, we all know the stat. 143 teams in NBA history have been down 3-0. 143 teams have lost the series. So no team in NBA history has ever come back from a 3-0 deficit. One has in Major League Baseball. That would be my Boston Red Sox over the New York Yankees in 2004. And I believe 2 hockey teams have done it. No NBA team's ever done it. And the Brooklyn Nets will not be the first. So first of all, we know for the Nets, they have to win tomorrow to get back in the series. But if KD loses in the first round, because here's what that's going to do. Golden State's flourishing without him. They're the favorites to win the championship right now without him. This could be 2 straight years that Kevin Durant, the guy who people proclaim as the best basketball player on earth, this would be 2 straight years he doesn't even get to the conference finals. You say, well, Bryson, come on, this conference finals, only 4 teams do that. Excuse me, I thought he was the best player in the world. Y'all know I love KD. I have great admiration for what he did for the Warriors, helping bring 2 championships back to Golden State. 3 championships in 4 years, 2 of those came with KD. And it would have been 4 championships in 5 years if KD doesn't get hurt in 2019. So I have the ultimate respect for Kevin Durant as a basketball player. But I think what separates KD from the guy who, when KD came into the league, was the best player in the world. Well, I think Kobe was the best player in the world when KD came in. But for the vast majority of Kevin Durant's career, LeBron James has been the best basketball player on earth. Now that LeBron isn't, it should have been KD's turn, but Giannis said, it's my turn now. Now Giannis is the best player in the world. The difference in LeBron and Giannis as opposed to KD, they galvanize a team. They impact the game on both sides of the floor, right? Never too high, never too low. They're not bothered by social media criticism. They're not flaky up and down. They're coachable. I mean, reports were KD couldn't stand Steve Kerr. That's the only person I've ever heard say, God, Steve Kerr drove me crazy. Couldn't stand that guy. Draymond and Steve Kerr, you can't even imagine. You can look it up, but you can't even imagine the things that Draymond Green has said to Steve Kerr. You can't even imagine. Draymond swears by that man. KD couldn't stand him. You know why KD likes Steve Nash? Steve Nash isn't going to get in KD's business. Steve Nash isn't going to interfere with what KD, and Kyrie deserves blame for this too. But the reason I'm putting this all on Kevin Durant, because he's the best player. KD didn't have to join Kyrie in Brooklyn. He didn't have to go to an organization that, let's be real, ain't exactly used to winning. He could have stayed with Golden State. Kept winning title after title after title, elevated himself into one of the 10 greatest players of all time. He'd probably have 3 rings by now and competing for a 4th. But no, I want to be the man to lead a team. Now, Kevin Durant's one of the few players that I don't have an issue with that. Now, to go play with Kyrie, I got a big issue with that, because who on earth would leave Steph Curry for Kyrie Irving? No idea. Clearly, Kevin Durant would. But in terms of the skill set and the talent to be able to lead a team, KD can do that. We know that. He's that great. But bro, you can't lose in the first round when your old team is the championship favorites. They're getting to the finals. Golden State is getting to the finals. I said that before the season started. I'll continue to hold to that. Whereas Brooklyn could very well get knocked out in the first round. That would be a devastating blow to KD's legacy. I think the whole legacy thing can be thrown around too much. Not in this case. Because when you are a guy who is certainly competing to be the best player on earth, bro, you can't lose in the first round. Well, Boston's a better team. I agree. That's why I picked them to win the series, because they're a better team. But if you're the best player in the world, your old team's doing what they're doing to the Denver Nuggets. Are you that dude or not? It's a fair question. It's a good thing. It's a good thing that this podcast hasn't reached, I don't know, Joe Rogan status. Not exactly the biggest Joe Rogan fan, but certainly he's got the highest rated podcast. It's a good thing that this podcast hasn't gotten to that point. With KD playing the way he's playing, or he would be killing me on Twitter right now. Because we know he does it to the top media members in this business. But I don't know. Of course, then again, it's kind of like there's certain individuals, if they go, y'all know who I'm talking about. There's certain individuals, if they go after you on Twitter, you're doing something right. Well, I think it's just saying in general, if they're trashing you, say, you suck and all that, you're probably doing something right. They don't do that to the ones that suck. It's the highest rated podcasters that are just in any business, not even just podcasters, but any business. If you're somebody out there, hustling and going out there and getting in this world, and you got people hating on you, hey, look at that as a term of endearment, because they want to be you. Just my motivational tip of the day. If I can compress it into a quote, if you got big dreams and you're grinding, if you're grinding and you got haters, you're grinding the right way. I'll leave it at that. But we do have some big basketball games tonight. I will discuss our last topic of the day. I'll discuss one game in particular. But we got 3 big basketball games tonight. We got one that starts in like 5 minutes right now live. The Miami Heat taking on the Atlanta Hawks, game 3 of that series. The Heat have a 2-0 lead, and they're 1.5-point favorites on the road. Listen, Miami's the better team. I love Trae Young, loved him since Oklahoma, but and I said regardless whether it was Cleveland or Atlanta, of course it was Atlanta that got in the playoffs. Regardless who got in and played Miami, I had Miami winning in 5 games. I'll still hold to that. I'm going to say Trae gets him a game because Trae's that great of a player and certainly that great of a player in the postseason. I'll say he gets it tonight or in game 4. But the loss of Capella, man, has hurt Atlanta. That the loss of size and height, that has really, really hurt Atlanta, especially in game 2. I mean, the rebounding battle was, huge in deciding that game. And certainly Jimmy Butler going out there and getting buckets. Jimmy Buckets, as they call him, going out and getting 45. Matter of fact, I think Jimmy Butler actually tied LeBron for the second most 40-point games, second most 40-point playoff games for the Miami Heat. Like Dwayne Wade's first, of course. That's not a surprise to anybody. Mr. Miami Heat, Wade County. Wade's got seven 40-point games in the playoffs with the Heat. LeBron had 3 or has 3, and now Jimmy Butler has 3. So, and Jimmy Butler's obviously been in Miami in less time than LeBron and has played way fewer playoff games than LeBron did in Miami. So, credit to him. He's a big-time playoff performer. But I'm going to go... Gosh, I really do think Atlanta's going to get a game in this series. I'm going to go out on a limb and say Atlanta wins this one tonight. Well, what's there to lose? I said they get a game, so they got to get at some point. And I don't think it's kind of like with the Denver Nuggets. I think a lot of those guys, not Jokic, but a lot of those guys are going to be thinking about Cancun and where they're vacationing in game 4. And so they won't be psychologically there, and the Warriors will sweep that series. I think if Atlanta loses tonight, some of those players, look, let's be real. They'll be thinking about vacation, sitting on the beach, right? Getting a rest from what's a long, grueling season. So Atlanta wins tonight. I'll give Atlanta the win tonight. I think they win close. So, yeah, I guess I would go Hawks plus 1.5 on that one. Second game, which tips off on ABC in about an hour and a half. You got the Milwaukee Bucks, the Chicago Bulls. I'm going to touch on that game in just a second, so, hang on for that. And then, equally interesting a game, the Phoenix Suns, the New Orleans Pelicans. Of course, we all know Devin Booker is out for games 3 and 4. Possibly beyond that. I think definitely beyond that. My personal opinion, it's a hamstring injury. Though hamstrings, man, are no joke. And Devin Booker, on both his left and right legs, has always seemed to have a real problem with hamstring injuries. He may need to get that checked out in the offseason, or maybe right now in the playoffs. I don't know if he'll have the time to do that. But that's going to be interesting. Like I said yesterday's show, we're going to find out a lot about the Phoenix Suns, especially in these next 2 games starting tonight, because New Orleans is playing really good basketball. They're hot. They feel good about themselves. They've stolen the home court now in this series. The best player in the series, in my view, Devin Booker, is out. This is going to be, I think Chris Paul will rise to the occasion. Phoenix is still a 2-point favorite. Even with the injuries, Phoenix is still a 2-point favorite. I'm going to go along with that. I'm going to say it's a close game. I'm going to go 108-104 Suns win tonight. So I think they do cover the spread. I do think it's a game that comes down the wire. I think guys like Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum show up. But Chris Paul, statistically this season, was the best player in the fourth quarter. And the Suns this year were the best team in what they call clutch time, which is, I think, the last 2 minutes of a game when the score is within 5 points. The Suns were the best team in the NBA at that. And so considering the fact that I think it will be a close game, I think Phoenix will get it done, make the big plays down the stretch. Chris Paul will do it. Chris Paul always does on both ends. And so I'll take the Suns to win a close one. I'll go 108-104. But that game in between, the game is going to tip off on ABC in an hour and a half. You got the Bucks and you got the Bulls. Series tied at a game apiece. So Chicago certainly is feeling good about themselves. None more than DeMar DeRozan, and for good reason, dropping 41 in game 2 in that road win over Milwaukee. Khris Middleton is, of course, out for the foreseeable future. As a matter of fact, I think I read indefinitely, which anytime you hear that I word, in the playoffs in terms of injuries, the other I word, injuries and indefinitely, there's certainly an appropriate level of concern that comes along with that. And so with Khris Middleton, let's see, I think I got a comment right here. Yeah, my man John, loyal Bulls fan, he said, let's go Bulls. And again, Bulls fans have good reason to be confident because of the injury, because of how DeMar played in game 2 after a bad game 1. He responded big time, as the great players in this league do, in game 2. The Middleton injury is really, really, really big because we know Middleton gives you 25 points a night, most nights. But I don't think he gets enough credit for how good he is on the defensive end of the floor. Long, quick. He's got a phenomenal motor. Like, the guy just doesn't get tired. And so the fact that he can take guys like DeMar DeRozan or Zach LaVine, that's big for Milwaukee. And that's 25 points and great defense that you're not going to have for, at the very least, the next 2 or 3 games. And so what we're going to see now, it's very similar to Phoenix. Now, the difference is I think Devin Booker is the best player of the Suns. Khris Middleton's obviously not the best player in the Bucks. That's Giannis. But I think what we're going to see now is Giannis, who I believe is the best player in the world. And John says right here, got to stop Giannis at half court. Absolutely. And Giannis is probably, Giannis and Drew Holiday are going to be bringing the ball up, a lot, sort of being the initiator of the offense. I think Giannis is going to have to go for 40 these next 2 games. I think with the absence of Middleton, that's what's going to have to take. He's going to have to play great defense down low against the likes of Vucevic, who's played okay the first 2 games of the series. Certainly better than he's been playing the regular season, considering he's a former All-Star with the Orlando Magic. Giannis is going to give you what he always gives you in the defensive end of the floor. Probably a couple blocks. Whoever's, goes down low with him is going to shoot a low percentage because that's how effective Giannis is with his length and his height and his quickness and his defensive savvy. But in the offensive end of the floor, I don't want to see Giannis take a ton of threes. He shot from the 3-point line at a better percentage this year than he has most years. But I think the thing for him, what I want is for Milwaukee, this is always the case in the playoffs, but especially when you're undermanned, when you're missing a guy like Khris Middleton. You cannot waste a trip down the floor. Chicago's going to give Giannis open shots. And certainly the floor. Now, Milwaukee has some good shooters, Middleton being one of them. So, again, that's another thing you don't have for Middleton is excellent 3-point shooting. And a guy who can create his own shot as well. But the floor is going to be a little bit more condensed, right? Because you don't have that great shooting out there with Middleton. So Giannis may or may not have some open shots because they're going to say, okay, these other guys aren't going to get open 3-point shots rather. So Giannis, I hate to sound like Shaq right now because Shaq always says this about the great big men in this league. But Giannis going to have to dominate down low. Not only is he going to have to be the best player on the floor tonight, I think you're going to need 40, 15 rebounds. Does he get other guys involved? Giannis tends to do that at a high level. He's had a triple-double in the playoffs before. He did that last year. So probably 5-6 assists. But the 3 most important stats for Giannis, I think over these next 2 games, at least, maybe even 3 games, I'm going to need 40, 15, and 2 blocks. Now, that's a lot to ask. But this is the best player on the planet. This is definitely the best 2-way player on the planet. So what does he give you? That's what it comes down to. I think DeMar's going to show up tonight, give you 30. Zach LaVine's going to give you 25, 27 points, something like that. The Bulls crowd is going to be excited, feeling good about themselves, and for good reason, right? You have guys like, obviously, Vucevic, Caruso. Those guys. We know this about role players. They play better at home than they do on the road. That's what it's all about. Shaq always calls it getting the others. What do the others do? Well, the others are always better at home. So by that metric, Bucks others aren't going to be as good on the road. The Bulls others are going to be excellent at home. So that's what it comes down to is I think this is going to be a tight game. Vegas still has Milwaukee. I'm surprised they have them as 2.5-point favorites. If Milwaukee was the favorite, I'd have it by a point, no more than 1.5 points. 2.5 points feels like a lot to me. because I do think, like Phoenix and New Orleans, I think this is going to be a tight basketball game. And Lord knows I don't trust Mike Budenholzer as far as I can throw him. And I think Billy Donovan is a better coach than Mike Budenholzer. I think Giannis shows up. I'm going to give him a stat line tonight. I'm going to give him 41 points, 16 rebounds, 3 blocks in a 114 to 112 win over the Chicago Bulls. That's what I got. 114, 112. Let me write that stat line down. See how accurate I am, and I'll tweet it after the game if I can. If I can, see how close I am. Let's see. Giannis, 41 points, 16. I think I said 16 rebounds, 3 blocks. That's what I'm gonna give him tonight, and I will say the Bucks win tonight in Game 3. So with that, my goodness, we got some great playoff games this weekend. Hey, does Deebo Samuel get traded over the weekend? Hey, the NFL draft's in a week, folks. We're coming close. So, by the way, going to be doing an NFL draft live stream. I don't have the graphic for that quite yet, but going to be doing a first-round NFL draft live stream next Thursday. Real quick, John says he's going to get his talking about Giannis, but let's go Bulls. Absolutely, man. The Bulls have had a great season. I just think they, it's so funny. That's how the playoffs work, man. That's how the playoffs work. And John just says, let's go Jets. Why we got to bring the Jets into this? I guess because I was talking about the draft. Let's not have the Jets stain up this show. Well, the Bulls. Well, I'm going to give the Bulls their shine, man. They're playing great basketball. Let's not talk about the Jets, man. Let's not talk about them. But that's the funny thing about the playoffs. How that works is we're thinking going in the playoffs like, dang, the Bulls. Oh, you want to talk about bad luck getting the defending champs in the first round after not playing good basketball this year, and then Khris Middleton goes down. It's funny how that tends to work. That's what I love about the NBA playoffs. Not injuries, of course. Nobody loves injuries, but the unpredictability of it. Nothing's guaranteed in the National Basketball Association, and especially in the playoffs. Well, once again, NFL draft is in the first round of the NFL draft is in 6 days. Second and third round is a week from today, and then 4 through 7 is on Saturday. Not going to be doing a live stream for Friday and Saturday, but for Thursday. So 6 days from now, going to be doing an NFL draft live show. I'm still getting my my guest and everybody who's going to be on lined up. It's going to be a good time, talking football, watch the NFL draft. It's going to be a fun time. So I really look forward to that. And so with that, that is all the time we have for today's show. I appreciate everybody stopping by. As always, be sure to catch Carving Up Live at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time on Monday on Facebook Live, YouTube, and on Twitter. Be sure to also catch the Carving Up podcast on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, Anchor, as well as wherever you listen to your podcasts. And also, by the way, on those podcasting platforms, tomorrow morning, more specifically, episode 3 of the Carving Up U.S. President's Edition will air on all podcasting platforms. And if you want to watch it, you want to see pictures of the presidents that we are talking about, you can see that on YouTube. Of course, you will hear my voice. You will hear the voice of Isaac Lawson, who has been phenomenal in this series. We're going to be covering 5 presidents. Probably some names you maybe haven't heard. You got your Zachary Taylors, your Millard Fillmores, and your Franklin Pierce, your James Buchanan. But the man himself, Abraham Lincoln. We will touch on him a lot for probably, like I said, I've been promoting this show for the last few days. The first half is the first 4 presidents we'll cover. The whole last half of the episode is just going to be all Abraham Lincoln. Because it's Abraham Lincoln, man. Come on. The Carving Up, episode 3, the U.S. President's Edition, will be available tomorrow morning. So, like I said, you want to go to work? Or, you want to go to work. If you got to go to work tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon, whenever you go to work, if you work on Saturdays, listen to the podcast. If your boss will let you, of course. But you could listen to the podcast on the drive there. But if you wake up in the morning, you got the day off, it's Saturday, you wake up, eat breakfast or drink coffee, whatever you do in the mornings, turn on the U.S. President's Edition. And this is one of the more fascinating episodes, for a number of reasons. Primarily because of Abraham Lincoln, of course. But just be sure to check that out tomorrow. So until Monday, hope everybody has a great weekend. Some great NBA playoff action. A lot going on in sports right now. I freaking love it. So stay safe out there. God bless you all. Peace out. Giannis. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube. Be sure to click that big red subscribe button and go check out the other clips and full shows of Carving It Up Live. Have a blessed day.